The morning they lost everything, Nkechi Eze was already awake. She had been awake since 3 a.m., sitting on the kitchen floor of apartment 407, listening to her son breathe through the thin wall between them, calculating how many minutes she had left before the people who were coming would arrive. She knew they were coming. The final notice had been specific about the date and merciless about the time. 7 a.m. Not 7:05. Not approximately 7. 7 o'clock exactly. The way institutions are precise when they want you to understand that your situation is not personal to them, that you are a case number and a property address and a line in a ledger that needed clearing. She used those hours well. Chinidu's school certificates went into a Ziploc bag she sealed 3 times and tucked behind the loose tile under the bathroom sink. The one she'd pried up herself at midnight with a kitchen knife while her son slept. Jihoon's work photographs, the ones from before the fire, went into the lining of her winter coat, sewn in with the small travel sewing kit she'd kept since Lagos. And the metal box, heavy, scratched, the kind of box that looked like it held nothing until you understood what was actually inside it. She slid under Chinidu's mattress and covered with his blanket. By 6:58 a.m., she was standing by the front door, dressed, composed, her son beside her in his school uniform because she had decided that if this day was going to happen, it was going to happen with her son dressed properly. 3 knocks. Official rhythm. The kind that doesn't ask permission. She opened the door. For court officers. 2 building security guards wearing the Kang Group logo on their jackets. And behind them, slightly to the left, a camera crew from Seoul Evening Report. Their lens already recording. The red light blinking with the steady indifference of a machine that doesn't know what it's filming. Nobody had warned her about the cameras. She would understand later that someone had called them deliberately. "Mrs. Eze," the lead officer said, not unkindly. "You've received the notices." "I have," she said. What the cameras captured in the next 40 minutes was not what the crew expected to find. They expected distress, disorder, the kind of footage that makes viewers feel better about their own lives. What they got was something harder to process. A woman who moved through the dismantling of her home with the precision of someone who had already grieved this privately and was now simply executing a plan. She helped Chinidu with his backpack. She spoke to him quietly in Igbo, her voice never rising, her face never breaking. She thanked Pastor Kim, who arrived within 20 minutes of a neighbor's call, for the shelter offer. And then one of the officers reached for the metal box they found beneath the mattress during the mandatory property inventory, and something shifted in Nkechi's face. "That is not yours," she said. Her voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that stops people. The officer paused. "Contents must be inventoried as potential estate property," the senior officer said, stepping forward, showing her the relevant clause on the official form. Nkechi looked at the form. She looked at the box. She looked at her son, who was watching her with the expression of a child who has decided to take his emotional cues entirely from his mother. She stepped back. They took the box. The cameras captured all of it. Her face as they carried it out, Chinidu's small hand finding hers, the way she stood very straight in the doorway of the empty apartment and did not look away until the officers were out of sight. That footage aired at 6 p.m. on every major channel in Seoul. And as one officer loaded the metal box into the vehicle, he stepped away from the group, pulled out a second phone, not his work phone, and spoke quietly into it. 5 words. The box wasn't in there. A long exhale on the other end of the line. "Then she already moved it," the voice said. "Find it." You are watching Afro-K Storyverse. If the story is already pulling you in, hit that subscribe button right now because we tell stories here that will keep you up at night. Like this video, drop a comment telling us what you think Nkechi is hiding, and let's get into it. Kang Min-jae was in the middle of a board meeting when his assistant slid a tablet across the mahogany table without a word. The assistant had worked for him for 11 years. She had seen him navigate hostile government investigations, the death of his father, a shareholder revolt in 2019 that nearly cost him the company, all without breaking his composure. She had never, in 11 years, interrupted a board meeting without being asked. He glanced at the screen. Seoul Evening Report. Breaking footage. Eviction in Mapo district. He almost didn't watch it. The quarterly numbers were half presented. The shareholders were restless, and he had 40 minutes before a presentation that could not be rescheduled. Then he saw the building. He stopped breathing at a normal rate. His executives continued talking. Nobody noticed for a full 30 seconds that their CEO had gone somewhere else entirely. Not physically, but in the specific way of a man who has just seen something he has spent years not looking at directly. He was not looking at the woman. Not yet. He was looking at the architecture, the curve of the entrance arch, the third-floor balconies, the old fire escape on the east side that had never been updated because his grandfather's original contractor used a non-standard bracket system that required a specific replacement part that nobody had ever bothered to order. Then he saw the apartment number above the door. 407. Reschedule everything, he said quietly. Sir, the shareholders. Reschedule everything. He was already walking toward the door when he stopped. He pulled out his phone and checked the property records for that building, his hands very still on the screen. The building belonged to Kang Group. His company. His company had evicted her. He opened a folder on his phone that he kept behind 3 levels of security, a folder he had not opened in 6 years. Inside was a single photograph of a man in a firefighter's helmet, standing outside an apartment building, laughing at something off camera. Standing outside apartment 407. Min-jae looked at the photograph for a long time. He called his head of property management before he reached the elevator. The Mapo eviction. Apartment 407. Explain it. Simple non-payment, sir, Director Park said smoothly. The tenant was 6 months behind. Standard procedure. Send me the payment records. A pause. Of course. It may take a day. 10 minutes. He sat in his car and waited. The records arrived in 9. He read them once. Then he called Ms. O, his private financial auditor, who answered on the first ring because that was what he paid her for. I'm sending you a payment file. Tell me if these were processed or redirected. For minutes later, she called back. Her voice had the careful quality of someone delivering dangerous information. The payments were received every month for 3 years, sir. They were logged as received, then rerouted to a subsidiary account that hasn't been officially active since. She stopped. Since when? Since the year of the Incheon factory fire. The silence in the car was absolute. She paid, Min-jae said. Every month. Someone has been stealing her rent and marking her as delinquent. She was set up to be evicted from the beginning. He gripped the steering wheel. Who has access to that subsidiary account? Ms. O's voice dropped. That's what frightens me, sir. According to the authorization records, only one person has ever had access. Pause that felt very long. You, she said. The accountant's name was Ryu Sung-min, and by the time Min-jae sent 2 investigators to his office that afternoon, the man had been gone for exactly 14 hours. His desk had been emptied with unusual thoroughness. Not the careless clearing of someone who resigned, but the precise elimination of someone who knew the investigators were coming. Every drawer wiped. The computer's hard drive physically removed. Even his desk plants were gone, leaving only dry soil circles on the windowsill like the outlines of things that used to be alive. Security footage from the past 72 hours was gone. Not corrupted. Not glitched. Selectively deleted specific timestamps, the kind of deletion that requires system-level access and knowledge of which cameras to target. There's nothing here, the lead investigator reported. Check the physical space, Min-jae said. People always miss something physical. They searched for 20 minutes. Under the top drawer, stuck to the underside where you'd only find it if you were looking hard enough. A yellow sticky note, pressed there deliberately, left by someone who wanted to be sure the right person would eventually find it. It said, Basement, East Wall, behind the water meter. The investigator photographed it and sent it to Min-jae. Min-jae stared at it. Don't go to the basement, he said. Seal the office. I'm coming myself. Why not let us? Because someone went to this much trouble to erase everything and left only this. That's not an oversight. It's either a trap or a test. And I need to know which one before I walk into it. He paused. Or both. He went to the building first. He needed to see 407 himself before anything else. The apartment was locked, officially stripped, pending new tenancy processing. But in the third-floor hallway, an elderly man was mopping with the methodical patience of someone who has been doing the same job for a very long time. He was perhaps 70, small, wearing the building's maintenance uniform. When he saw Min-jae, he stopped mopping. He looked at him with an expression that was not surprise, not deference. Recognition. "You're finally back," the old man said. Min-jae stopped. "We've never met." "No." The man tilted his head slowly. "But I know your face. And I've been waiting a long time for someone who wears it to come through that door." "What does that mean?" The old janitor looked at apartment 407. "The man who lived here told me that someday someone with real authority would come asking questions. He said I should make sure they got real answers. Not the kind your people normally get." Min-jae's voice was careful. "Ji-hoon told you that?" The janitor's eyes moved to his face with sudden, sharp precision. "I never said his name," he said. A silence filled the hallway. "How long have you been the janitor here?" Min-jae asked. The old man allowed himself a small, complicated smile. "I've never been the janitor," he said. He reached into his coat and placed a folded document in Min-jae's hand. A legal agreement dated 11 years ago. A witness protection placement document. The name on it was not the name on the maintenance uniform. The name on it was Choi Dae-won, and beside it was a professional designation. Senior Forensic Accountant, Kang Group Internal Audit Division. Nkechi and Chinidu were at the church shelter in Yongsan when it happened. Pastor Kim had given them a private room, asked no questions that didn't need asking, and brought Chinidu a bowl of rice with the specific warmth of someone who has seen hard things and knows that food is the first language of care. Nkechi lay awake that night listening to her son breathe and trying to calculate how much time she had and who knew what and whether the people looking for the metal box understood that the metal box was not the thing that mattered. At 3:17 a.m., the shelter's back door opened. The sound was subtle, not forced, unlocked by someone who knew the specific model of lock on that door and how to manage it in under 40 seconds. She was already moving before she was fully awake, placing herself between the door and Chinidu's bed. Nothing came through the door. In the morning, Pastor Kim confirmed, nothing was stolen. The donation box, untouched. The office electronics, undisturbed. The emergency cash fund, intact. Only one thing was gone. Chinidu's backpack, which he'd hung on the hook beside the door. Inside it, his school notebook, packet of biscuits, a photograph of his father, and a small, strange-toothed key that Ji-hoon had pressed into his son's palm the week before he died, saying, "This opens something important, Chinidu. Keep it safe until someone you trust asks for it. You'll know who." Nkechi stared at the empty hook for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She opened her winter coat, reached into the inner lining, and removed a small photograph. Ji-hoon standing beside a man in a business suit. On the back, Ji-hoon's handwriting. "If something happens to me, find his brother. He'll understand." She looked at the man in the suit. She pulled out her phone. She searched Kang Min-jae. The first result was from 3 hours ago. Kang Group CEO launches investigation into own company's eviction practices. The photograph in the article showed the same man. Nkechi sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. Ji-hoon had known. He had planned for this. He had planned for all of it. She called the number listed in the article. Min-jae answered an unknown number because he had learned that morning that the information that mattered most often came from directions he hadn't been watching. "Your brother's name is Kang Seo-jun," the voice said. "He worked at the Incheon facility in 2017. My husband saved his life. And before Ji-hoon died, he left me instructions for exactly this moment. I think we need to meet." Min-jae didn't ask how she got the number. Are you and your son safe right now? No, she said honestly. But I know something you don't. And someone broke into our shelter last night looking for it. So we need to move fast. They met within the hour. Nkechi spread Ji-hoon's hand-drawn sketch on the table between them. A floor plan of apartment 407, detailed beyond the official building plans, with measurements that didn't match any registered document. Ji-hoon was a safety inspector. He understood structures with professional precision and the specific patience of a man who knew that the truth could be hidden inside walls if you built the hiding place correctly. One section was circled 3 times. The east-facing interior wall of the living room. Below the circle, asterisk standard cavity wall. Non-load-bearing. Modified by original contractor. Access panel behind the electrical junction box. Requires specific key. Min-jae looked up. The key. They took it, Nkechi said. But Ji-hoon always made 2 of everything. She reached into the winter coat, deeper this time, into a second concealed pocket he hadn't seen her touch before, and placed a key on the table, identical to the stolen one. He told me, 1 for Chinidu to carry openly, 1 for me to keep hidden, the one they see, the one they don't. Min-jae stared at the key. He knew he was being watched. He knew for months, Nkechi said. He just didn't know who, and he didn't know if you could be trusted. She paused. Neither did I until an hour ago. What changed? She looked at him steadily. You started asking questions that someone clearly didn't want you asking. People who have something to hide don't investigate themselves. They went to the basement first. The sticky note was accurate. Behind the water meter on the east wall, a hollow panel, secured by a padlock that Ryu Sung-min either couldn't bring himself to destroy or didn't have time to. Inside, a fireproof archive box. Inside that, files. 43 tenant files spanning 12 years. Every file belonged to an immigrant family, Nigerian, Filipino, Vietnamese, Bangladeshi, Ethiopian, living in Kang Group properties across 4 districts of Seoul. Every file was stamped in red. Expedited removal. Every family had been evicted. This isn't incompetence, Min-jae said, his voice flat with controlled fury. This is a system. Nkechi was reading one file and had gone very still. Min-jae, she said quietly. Look at this. She held it up. His name was on it. Not as an executive. As a complainant. Someone who had officially requested the Mapo district building be redeveloped. Someone who had signed off on her family's displacement 18 months ago. He took the file. He studied the signature. It was precise, practiced, authentic in every surface detail. He had never seen this document in his life. Someone has been signing your name for a long time, Nkechi said. For long enough, he said quietly, that legally there may be no difference between them and me. He closed the file. We need Ji-hoon's file. They searched the archive. Ji-hoon's file was the only one missing. But on the inside bottom of the archive box, visible only when all files were removed, someone had written in small, pressed hard letters. His file is IN 407. They don't know about the wall yet. And below that, different handwriting, shakier, added later. They found out. Move everything. R. Ryu Sung-min, Min-jae said. He knew about the wall, Nkechi said. But he didn't know Ji-hoon had already moved whatever was inside. She paused. Or he did know. And this is him telling us. Go to the apartment. They packed the archive files and turned to leave. The basement light went out. In the sudden absolute darkness, they both stopped moving. From the direction of the stairwell, slow, deliberate footsteps. Descending one at a time with the patience of someone who believed their destination was already secured. Nkechi gripped Min-jae's arm. He covered his phone screen with his palm and opened the flashlight just wide enough to find her eyes. He mouthed, "No back door." The footsteps stopped, directly above them. Then a voice, calm, unhurried, pleasant in the way that dangerous things sometimes are, spoke through the floor. Mr. Kang, I think it's time we talked properly. I've been very patient with you. Min-jae's jaw tightened. He recognized the voice. He had heard it in board meetings for 8 years. It belonged to Director Han Sung-woo, his most senior property executive. The man who ran day-to-day operations with quiet, unremarkable efficiency. The man Min-jae trusted completely. Han came down the stairs alone, hands visible, speaking in the tone of someone who has rehearsed this conversation many times and is relieved to finally be having it. I need you to understand something before you decide what to do with those files. There's a reason I've been moving slowly. There's a reason Ryu left that note. We've been building toward this for 3 years. If you expose this now, before it's complete, they will destroy every piece of evidence and walk free. You knew about all of this, Min-jae said. I uncovered it. There's a difference. What followed reframed everything. 6 years ago, a chemical storage facility owned by a Kang Group subsidiary caught fire during a night shift. 31 workers were inside. The official record, 28 survivors, 3 fatalities, cause listed as electrical fault, response time listed as acceptable. The reality? According to Ji-hoon's testimony recorded before his death, the fire started 3 hours before the alarm was sounded. Safety protocols were deliberately overridden to avoid triggering a regulatory inspection that would have revealed illegal chemical storage. One man, a contract safety inspector running a late compliance check, broke protocol himself, disabled a security door from the inside, and personally guided 23 workers through a compromised section of the building while the official emergency response was still in traffic. That man was Lee Ji-hoon. He was Nigerian Korean, married 7 years, with a 4-year-old son named Chinidu. He saved 23 lives. The official report credited the emergency response team. Ji-hoon's name appeared nowhere in any official document. He never told you? Han asked, looking at Min-jae. Min-jae's voice was barely controlled. My brother told me he was lucky, that he got out before it got bad. Han nodded slowly. Ji-hoon asked everyone he saved to stay quiet. He said if they made noise, the company would find a way to punish them for surviving. He'd seen it before. A pause. He was right. They found a way to punish him anyway. Min-jae called Seo-jun that night. His brother answered on the first ring. It's true, Seo-jun said. His voice had changed, not surprised, but the way someone sounds when a door they've kept shut finally opens. All of it. He went back in twice. Once for a worker who'd passed out. Once for a file room workers stored immigration documents there. If those files burned, some of them would have lost their legal status. He carried people out, Min-jae said. He carried people out. And then he made sure we all understood. Don't put his name anywhere. Don't say he was there. He said he had a wife and a son. He said invisible was the only way to stay safe. A long silence. He was wrong about that too in the end, Seo-jun said. Ji-hoon got sick 18 months after the fire. Respiratory deterioration. Rapid, aggressive progression. The doctors said it was unusually aggressive for his age and health history. What was in that building? Min-jae said. Things that weren't on any official inventory. Ji-hoon breathed them in for hours. He knew. He filed a private medical report and sent copies to 3 different people. Seo-jun's voice dropped. Just in case his death looked like natural causes and nobody came looking. They entered apartment 407 at midnight. Han had arranged a 30-minute maintenance window in the building security system. The apartment was empty and cold, lit only by their phones. The east wall of the living room looked ordinary. Nkechi found the electrical junction box. Behind it, exactly as Ji-hoon's sketch showed, a recessed panel, flush with the wall, invisible unless you knew the measurements were wrong. The key fit perfectly. The panel opened. Inside, a waterproof case. Inside the case, a flash drive, black, unmarked, sealed in a Ziploc bag with a desiccant packet. A photograph. Ji-hoon, Nkechi, infant Chinidu, outside this apartment. On the back, Ji-hoon's handwriting, one word, home, and a letter, handwritten, sealed, addressed to no one and everyone. Nkechi recognized the handwriting before she touched it. She opened it. She read it. Whatever it said, she didn't share immediately. She folded it against her chest, closed her eyes, and breathed for a long moment. When she opened her eyes, her face had settled into something that was not quite calm and not quite grief but lived in the space between them. "He wrote this 2 months before he died," she said. "He knew what they'd done to him. He knew they'd come for us after. And he said everything they need is on this drive. Names, recordings, accounts, contracts, everything." Min-jae's tech specialist spent 40 minutes on decryption. The drive had a 10-attempt limit before permanent wipe. They had used 4 attempts. "What's the password?" the specialist asked. "We don't know," Min-jae said. Nkechi looked at Ji-hoon's letter again. Then at her phone, a photograph of Chinidu sleeping at the shelter. Ji-hoon's letter said, "Asterisk, the key to everything is the key to everything. Our son carries it. He's been carrying it since I taught him the game." "What game?" Min-jae asked. "I don't know yet," she said. "Chinidu does." She was already dialing the shelter when the line picked up immediately, Pastor Kim breathing hard on the other end. "Mrs. Ease, someone is outside. Men. 3 of them. I've called the police, but they're trying the back." Nkechi was already moving. Min-jae reached the shelter in 11 minutes. The men were gone by the time police arrived. They weren't there by accident, and they weren't there for Nkechi. They were there for the boy. Chinidu was unharmed, wrapped in a blanket, eating crackers with the focused composure of a child who has decided that crackers are a manageable thing to concentrate on. Nkechi held him for a long time without speaking. Then she sat across from him and asked about the game. Min-jae sat far enough away to give them space and close enough to hear. He used the time to go through the digital copies of the archive files. And then Ms. O sent him something worse than the payment records. 17 eviction approval documents. 11 redevelopment authorizations. For formal complaints against immigrant tenant organizations. All signed with his signature. All executed during periods when he was verifiably abroad. "They're real," Ms. O said. 3 independent document experts. The signatures are genuine. Biometric pen pressure analysis confirms it. Someone has been practicing your signature for years. Or they have access to a digital reproduction process that's been used in corporate fraud cases before. She paused. "Either way, legally, right now, these are your documents, sir." Min-jae looked up from his phone. Chinidu was looking at him. The boy had been studying him for several minutes with the quiet, evaluative intelligence of a child who has learned that adults sometimes need to be assessed before they can be trusted. "My dad talked about you," Chinidu said. Min-jae went very still. "What did he say?" The boy thought about it carefully. "He said, there's a man who doesn't know yet that he's one of the good ones. But he'll find out when it matters." He tilted his head. "Is it mattering now?" In the archive files, one name appeared more than any other. Not Min-jae's name. Not Han's name. Chairman Yu Byung-chul. Senior Executive, Kang Group's Property and Infrastructure Division. A man who had held that title for 14 years. A man who officially died 6 years ago. Cardiac arrest. Private funeral. Death certificate on file with Seoul Metropolitan Government. His company role dissolved. His shares redistributed through a complex trust arrangement. He appeared in the archive files authorizing evictions, approving redevelopments, signing off on the subsidiary account that had swallowed Nkechi's rent payments, right up to 3 months ago. "A dead man has been running a shadow operation inside my company," Min-jae said. Han nodded. "I found the first anomaly 4 years ago. It took 2 years to understand what I was looking at. You didn't die, or if he did, someone has been operating in his name so completely that it doesn't functionally matter." He paused. Ji-hoon knew his actual location. He told me, in one of the recordings he preserved, that he had documented proof. Not just of the fraud but of where you is operating from and the shell structure he's using. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Min-jae asked. 4 years ago. 3 years ago. Han looked at him steadily. Because the signature fraud started 6 years ago. And for the first 2 years, the forged documents were used to fund projects that benefited you personally. Profitable redevelopments. Favorable deals. You didn't know where the approvals were coming from, but you benefited from them. A pause. I needed to be certain you weren't part of it. And now you're certain. The way you reacted when you saw that eviction footage that wasn't performed. Nobody performs grief that specific. He paused. Also, you're here at 1 a.m. in a church shelter holding a child's backpack. That tends to clarify things. Story is getting deeper by the minute, and you don't want to miss where it goes. If you haven't subscribed to Afro-K Storyverse yet, now is the time. Hit that like button and drop a comment. Did you suspect Chairman you was still alive? Let's keep going. In the unencrypted outer files of the first drive, Min-jae found 41 audio recordings. Board meetings, private dinners, phone calls. In every one of them, the same voice could be heard. Sometimes openly, sometimes in background conversation. Asking precise, dangerous questions. Requesting documents that shouldn't exist. Pointing toward transactions that didn't add up. The voice referred to itself once, in an early recording. I'm not a whistleblower. I don't want protection. I want accountability. Call me the auditor. Min-jae listened to every recording in sequence, taking notes. 3 hours in, something in the cadence triggered a memory, a specific way of pausing before questions, making sure the question was exactly right before releasing it. He called Mr. Beck. The old man answered immediately. You're the auditor, Min-jae said. Silence. You spent 11 years in that building as a janitor gathering evidence. Ji-hoon found out who you were. That's why he trusted you with the files. That's why he asked you to protect the truth. Another silence. Then, Ji-hoon didn't find out who I was. He told me who I was. I'd forgotten after all those years. He reminded me that what I was doing had a name and a purpose. His voice was steady. I was a forensic accountant for Kang Group for 22 years. Then I discovered what you was building. I understood that the only way to stop him was from close range, slowly, with patience. So I became the janitor. I became the person nobody looks at when they want to hide something. The evidence package was nearly complete. Ms. O had compiled financial documentation. Mr. Beck's recordings were authenticated. The archive files were legally secured through a third-party notary. Han's internal investigation records, maintained meticulously for 4 years, provided a detailed operational timeline. 2 days before they planned to present everything to prosecutors, at 6 a.m., 12 police officers arrived at Director Han's home. He was arrested on charges of corporate fraud, document forgery, and unlawful tenant displacement. The warrant listed evidence Min-jae had never seen. Specific documents, account numbers, and testimony from Ryu Sung-min, who had apparently reappeared and given investigators a detailed statement placing all criminal responsibility squarely on Han. The business press ran with it within hours. Kang Group investigation cracks. Senior executive arrested. Min-jae read the headlines in his car without moving. Everything about this was wrong. He visited Han in holding. Through the glass, Han looked unsurprised. Not broken. Not frightened. He looked like a man watching a move he had predicted land exactly where he expected. I knew this was coming, Han said. I factored it in. Ryu didn't give that statement voluntarily. He's under duress. Find him, the real him, and he can reverse everything. Where is he? Han leaned forward. Before I tell you, understand something. What happens next is not a surprise. It's been planned by the person running this from the beginning. His voice dropped. They're not finished. Arresting me was step 1. Step 2 is coming fast. And step 2 isn't about me or Ji-hoon or the tenants. What is it about? You. It's always been about you. They need you gone, not arrested. removed from Kang Group quietly, completely, before the shareholders' meeting next week. Why the shareholders' meeting? Han stared at him. Because that's when they're taking the company. Min-jae was called to an emergency board meeting the following morning. 9 board members assembled, faces arranged in the careful neutral expressions of people who have already made a decision and are waiting for a meeting to formalize it. The charge, Min-jae's alleged involvement in the document fraud, based on the forged signatures and the subsidiary account traced to his authorization codes. He sat down and began to respond. Then the boardroom door opened. The man who entered was perhaps 65, lean, immaculately dressed, with the specific confidence of someone who has operated without consequences for so long that he has stopped imagining they're possible. Several board members visibly relaxed. Min-jae went cold. "Chairman Yu," he said. The man smiled. "I prefer to let people think I'm gone. It simplifies things enormously." He took a seat at the table as though he had never left it. "I've been watching your investigation with great interest. You're thorough. Your father was the same way. You've been running a criminal operation inside my company for over a decade," Min-jae said. "I've been protecting assets," Yu said smoothly. "Your assets. Occasionally that requires difficult decisions about underperforming properties and..." A slight pause. "Underperforming tenants. You killed a man." The room went still. Yu's expression didn't change. Ji-hoon E's died of complications from smoke inhalation. Medical records confirm this. Medical records you falsified. You opened a folder and slid it across the table. Transfer documents. They transfer your shares and executive authority to a management trust, which I control, pending the fraud investigation. They require only your signature. Min-jae didn't look at them. "And if I don't sign?" "Tomorrow morning, police will arrest Mrs. Nkechi Eze on charges of document theft and obstruction of a corporate investigation. The archive files you removed from the Mapo building belong to Kang Group. Legally, she helped you steal them. He let that land. The boy will go into the system while she's processed. These things take time. Weeks sometimes. You'd use a child. I'd use whatever is necessary. That's the difference between us." The pen sat on the table between them. "Sign, Min-jae. Let professionals manage what you've clearly found overwhelming." Min-jae looked at the pen. He picked it up. He set it down. "Give me until tomorrow morning," he said. 12 hours. You studied him. 12 hours. Then her arrest is processed." Min-jae walked out and did not stop moving until he reached his car. He called Nkechi immediately. "We need the second flash drive." Ji-hoon's letter mentioned it. "A toolbox." Silence. Then, he kept a toolbox at the shelter. Pastor Kim's husband let him store equipment in the maintenance room. "I forgot. Is it still there?" She called back in 4 minutes. "It's here. Nobody touched it." Inside Ji-hoon's toolbox, beneath the bottom tray, in a waterproof compartment built into the base, a second flash drive, red, marked with a small sticker of a tree. "Why a tree?" Min-jae asked when he arrived. Chinidu looked up from his homework. "Dad liked trees. He said trees are the only things that work hard their whole lives for people they'll never meet." Nkechi turned the drive over. "This one isn't encrypted. He didn't seal this one. He wanted this one found." Min-jae plugged it in. For the first 40 seconds, his expression was focused and professional. Then something shifted. "What's on it?" Nkechi asked. "Everything. Offshore accounts. Shell company structures. Contracts between you and 17 city officials. The chemical exposure cover-up. Falsified safety reports." He paused. Ji-hoon's personal medical recordings. Time-stamped entries where he documented his own deterioration and named the cause. He exhaled slowly. "But without the first drive, Yu's lawyers will challenge chain of custody. They'll call Ji-hoon a disgruntled contractor with a grievance and spend 2 years fighting each document individually." He looked at Nkechi. "We need the first drive. We need everything together." He looked at Chinidu. We need the game. The game was called the Memory House. Ji-hoon invented it when Chinidu was 5 years old, describing it as a memory exercise. The best players could keep a whole house inside their head, room by room, every object in every room, every detail exact. They played it every night at bedtime. Some rooms were real. Some were invented. One room was described only once. On a single specific night, 3 weeks before Ji-hoon died. He told Chinidu, "This room is special. You only need to remember it once. It has 7 objects in it. When someone asks you what's in the special room, tell them all 7 objects in order. That's the whole game. Can you do that?" Chinidu said yes. He had held it for 2 years without being asked. He recited it now, slowly. 7 objects, 7 details, in exact order, with the careful specificity of a child who understood, on some level, that this mattered in a way other things didn't. Min-jae's specialist converted the objects to the encoding Ji-hoon had used, a system she identified from the file structure in 40 seconds. She entered it. The drive opened. She stared at her screen. Nobody spoke. "There are over 400 files on this drive," she said. She scrolled. Recorded meetings going back 9 years. Bank transfer records. Signed contracts with government officials. Photographs of document exchanges. Video footage, actual video footage, of Yoo Byung-chul, alive, conducting business meetings at dates after his official death. She looked up. Ji-hoon didn't just gather evidence. He built a prosecution case. This is organized, indexed, and cross-referenced. He even included a summary document explaining what each file proves and in what order it should be presented. She paused. This man was dying, and he spent his last months building a legal case. Nkechi made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob. He was a safety inspector. He believed in documentation. He always said, "If you document it properly, the truth can survive anything." She looked at her son. Chinidu was eating crackers again with complete composure. "Good?" she asked him. He nodded. Dad always made good games. Before they could do anything else, Min-jae listened to Ji-hoon's personal recordings on the second drive. 21 entries. Recorded at night, quietly, so as not to wake anyone. The first entry, 14 months after the fire. Respiratory capacity down to 63%. Doctor says it's idiopathic, unknown cause, progressing unusually fast. I know the cause. I breathed that building for 6 hours. I know what was in it because I read the real storage manifests before they disappeared. I have copies. I have everything. The final entry, 3 weeks before his death. Nkechi doesn't know how fast this is moving. I don't want her to know yet. There are things I still need to put in place. Chinidu asked me today why I keep planting things. I told him. Because someone I'll never meet might need what grows. A quiet laugh in the recording. Warm. Tired. He's 7. He thought about it seriously and said, "That's very nice of you, Dad." As though I'd said something completely ordinary. A pause. He's going to be extraordinary, Nkechi. Whatever happens, he is going to be extraordinary. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. But I arranged things so that I'll still be useful. That has to be enough. Nkechi listened with her eyes closed and her hands flat on the table. When the recording ended, she opened her eyes. "He spent his last months building us a way out," she said. "While he was dying. He spent his last months building us a way out." She looked at Min-jae. These people took his recognition, his health, his time with us, and then they took his life. And even then, he was still thinking about how to protect us. She looked at him with a clarity that was almost alarming. "I want that named, publicly, officially, with their names attached to it." "I can do that," Min-jae said. "But I need everything Ji-hoon left us. All of it together. And I need the shareholders' meeting." Min-jae was called for 12 hours. He used 11 of them. A prosecutor received an evidence package by encrypted transfer at 4 a.m., the combined contents of both drives, the archive files, Mr. Beck's authenticated recordings, Han's 4-year internal investigation, Ms. O's financial analysis, Seo Jun's recorded testimony, and Ji-hoon's personal medical records. She reviewed it through the night. She had been a prosecutor for 17 years. She called Min-jae at 5:43 a.m. "I've never seen anything this organized," she said. "Who prepared this?" "A man who knew he was dying and didn't waste the time," Min-jae said. A pause. "I'll have officers positioned by 9:45. The shareholders' meeting convened at 10 a.m. You arrived 5 minutes early, lawyers flanking him, board allies already seated. The room arranged in the architecture of an outcome that had already been decided. He had the press briefed with his version. He had the optics managed. He had spent 6 years making sure that when this moment came, the story would be his to tell. He did not know what had happened at 4 a.m. Min-jae arrived precisely on time. Building security attempted to stop him. His access had been revoked. He walked to a different entrance. Mr. Beck was there, holding the door open with the quiet dignity of someone completing a very long assignment. "After you," the old man said. Min-jae walked into the room. The assembly went still. You looked at him with something that might have been admiration. "You're not authorized." "You're correct. I'm here as a shareholder. My family shares weren't transferred. Those require a physical signature you were unable to obtain. I have every legal right to be in this room." He walked to the presentation screen. He connected both drives. "I'd like to share some information with the shareholders before you proceed. I believe it's material to their investment decision." What followed was not a dramatic speech. It was a methodical, documented presentation, 400 files, Ji-hoon's case organized and indexed, every piece of evidence in the order Ji-hoon had specified, with Ji-hoon's own summary document narrating the connections in his careful, precise handwriting. The voice of a dead man, organized by his own hand, speaking through evidence instead of words. The shareholders watched in silence. At the 30-minute mark, 3 board members stood and walked out. They walked into police custody. Officers had been positioned in the lobby since 9:45 a.m. At minute 43 of the presentation, you stood. "This presentation is based on illegally obtained. Every file was legally secured through a third-party notary before this meeting," Min-jae said without looking up. "The chain of custody is documented. Your lawyers have copies." You moved toward the exit. He found Nkechi standing in the doorway. She looked at him for a long moment. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She stepped aside. The officers behind her stepped forward. As they moved to restrain him, you looked across the room at Min-jae. "You understand this will take years," he said, almost conversationally. "The legal process." "I know. Your company will be damaged. The publicity." "I know. Was it worth it?" you asked. "For a woman you didn't know a week ago. For a dead man's reputation." Min-jae looked at him. A man who saved 23 lives is buried in an unmarked chapter of history, while the people who let workers die got promoted. His wife was evicted from the home he built while someone used my name to do it. His son carried a secret for 2 years because his father trusted that someone would eventually come asking the right questions. He paused. "You're asking me if it was worth it to correct that. I can't take that question seriously." What followed over the next weeks was documented and irreversible. Yoo Byung-chul was charged with corporate fraud, document falsification, illegal tenant displacement, bribery of public officials, and criminal negligence resulting in death. The criminal negligence charge, covering the concealment of toxic chemical exposure at the Incheon facility, was the one his lawyers fought hardest. They did not succeed. Ji-hoon's medical records, his time-stamped personal recordings, and independent toxicological analysis commissioned and preserved by Mr. Beck formed an evidentiary foundation that took 3 years to fully prosecute but held completely. Ryu Sung-min emerged from a private protection arrangement. His genuine testimony dismantled the fraud structure from the inside. The coerced statement used to arrest Han was exposed within 2 weeks. Han's charges were dropped. He returned to Kang Group in an oversight capacity, this time with formal authority and a board-level mandate he had earned over 4 years of working alone. Mr. Beck, whose real name, used again for the first time in 11 years, was Choi Dae-won, retired from his assignment with the specific satisfaction of a man who set out to do something difficult and did it exactly right. He declined public recognition. "The evidence speaks," he said. "I was just the person who kept it dry." 3 weeks after the shareholders' meeting, Min-jae received a letter. It was from the families of the 23 workers Ji-hoon saved from the Incheon fire. Many of them had not known, until the trial evidence became public, that it was one man who came back for them. The letter was written in 8 languages. It said in each of them the same thing. *, we knew someone saved us. We just didn't know his name. Now we do. *. Min-jae folded the letter and drove to Nkechi's new apartment. He sat across from her at the kitchen table and placed the letter between them without speaking. She read it. She read it twice. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, he would have been embarrassed by all of this. Min-jae laughed. A real laugh, the first in weeks. "Probably," he said. He would have said, "It was just what you do. It's just what any person would do." She looked at the letter. He was always wrong about that part. 6 months later. Apartment 407. Restored, repainted. Its old fire escape finally fitted with the proper brackets that no one had ever bothered to order, was no longer a private residence. By unanimous vote of the Kang Group's restructured board and the newly established Resident Tenant Association, it had become the administrative center of the Ji-hoon Ease Housing Trust, a permanent initiative providing affordable, legally protected, long-term tenancy for immigrant families across Seoul, with a dedicated legal support division that did what Ji-hoon himself could never access: fought displacement before it happened. Nkechi led it. She hadn't planned to. She was asked, and she thought about it for 3 days, and then she said yes because the work needed doing and she understood it from the inside in a way that no outside expert could replicate. She was precise in her advocacy, documented, relentless, Ji-hoon's influence in every approach. She had also discovered, with some surprise, that she was very good at this. Chinidu received a full scholarship through a program established after his story became public. He accepted it without drama and told his mother he had decided to study architecture. "Why architecture?" she asked. He thought about it carefully, the way he thought about everything. "Because the reason we almost lost our home was that someone treated it like a number. I want to build places that feel like they matter, where the people inside them matter. And I want to understand the walls well enough that nobody can hide things inside them that shouldn't be there." Nkechi looked at her son for a long moment. He had Ji-hoon's eyes, Ji-hoon's precision, Ji-hoon's way of saying something that sounded simple but was actually very large. "Your father would love that answer," she said. On the day of the trust's official opening, Min-jae arrived to find Chinidu sitting on the front step, watching workers put the final touches on the restored entrance arch. He sat down beside him. They watched the work together in the comfortable silence that develops between people who have been through something real. Then Chinidu said, "Do you know why my dad planted trees?" Min-jae considered the question. "I think I'm beginning to," he said. The boy nodded. He said, "The best things you do are for people you'll never meet, and you do them anyway, because the world keeps going after you stop, and you want it to be better when it does." He looked up at the building. He wanted us to live somewhere safe. He didn't get to make sure of it himself, so he made sure of it anyway. Min-jae didn't say anything. He looked at the building, at its restored arch, its working fire escape, its ground floor being fitted with the trust's first office, and he thought about what gets passed down. Not titles, not shares, not the kind of inheritance that accountants calculate. The kind that moves through what people do when no one is watching. The things built in the dark with careful hands, for people they love and people they'll never know. Above the trust's entrance, a small plaque had been installed. Nkechi designed it herself. It read, * in memory of Eze Ji-hoon, safety inspector, father, husband, a man who went back, This building stands because he did. Asterisk. The children playing outside didn't read it yet, but they would. And that is the story of a man who spent his final months not grieving what was being taken from him, but building a way through for the people he loved, and the man who finally came to see it. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this one. Subscribe to Afro-K Storyverse so you never miss what we put out next. We tell stories that stay with you. And drop a comment below. What moment hit you the hardest? Was it Ji-hoon's recordings? Chinidu and the memory house? The plaque? Asterisk. Asterisk tell us. We read every single one. Asterisk. Until next time. Keep watching, keep feeling, and remember, the best things we do are for people we'll never meet. Asterisk. This is Afro-K Storyverse. We'll see you in the next story. Asterisk.